Right, good evening. You're watching Live with Faye. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have this conversation with you every evening at 8 o'clock, where we discuss the things that we believe are most pressing as issues in the country right now. As you can see on your screen, 12 million salaried jobs have been lost between April and August this year. 21 million salaried jobs have been lost between April and August this year. I beg your pardon. And that is a drastic number. And what we're going to focus on right now is the fact that the worst hit in that entire list are the young people of India, the ones who have lost the most jobs. In fact, about 5 hours ago, I put out a tweet asking young graduates to tell me what the job search has been like. And we've received hundreds of responses of people saying that there are no jobs, or job offers that they've received have been cancelled, that the pay is sharply lower than what it was in previous years, making it almost unviable. In most cases, there's no pay at all, as organizations are offering unpaid internships rather than paid jobs. So these numbers are according to the CMIE, that says 21 million salaried people have lost jobs between April and August. Now, as a definition, salaried is someone who has a job and gets paid an agreed amount on a regular basis. That's monthly in India. And that includes government employees, private sector employees, and informal employees as well, like maids, drivers, cooks, and cleaners, adding up to 21% of the total employment of India's salary. Now, I'm going to put up a graph for you. This graph is from the CMI website. We're just going to hold that graph there for a second so you can take a look at it. That drop is what we're talking about. That is a really, really sharp drop. Now, there are two things to notice in this graph. You'll see the spiky number is the number of people who are getting employed, but it is the red, the sharp red number that we should look at, which is the 4-month average. And you'll see that really sharp drop on the 4-month average. But the second story I would like to draw your attention to is the first half of that graph between April 2018 and June 2019, where you'll see that the red line is fairly steady. And this is not a good thing, because it means that there were no new jobs added in that period. That line should have ideally been going up. And this is pre-COVID, so we can't really blame it on the virus. Now, why should that line be going up? Now, research tells us that there are about 5 million new entrants to hit the job market every year. Where are those 5 million new entrants going to be accommodated if that line stays steady? So in spite of the fact that the line stayed steady for nearly 2 years, and then we had COVID, and then you see that sharp drop starting at April 20, right down to August 20, where it's really hitting the x-axis at that point, and that's really disappointing. Interestingly, the government has argued that most people have become self-employed, and that's a good thing. But and while entrepreneurship, according to again CMIE, has increased from 15% of the total jobs to 19% of the total jobs, there hasn't been an increase in the total jobs, which means that people have switched out and become entrepreneurs, but it hasn't really resulted in an increase in employment. So where are all the job seekers going then? They're going back to farming. By August 2020, employment in farming would have increased by 14 million people this year. And this is terrible news, and I'll tell you why. Because farming is a loss-making profession right now. It's not generating enough revenue to sustain the 111 million people already in farming, not to mention the 14 million that we've added this year. So they're going to farm and they're going to sell their crop, but they're going to be left with a loss rather than a profit. And that's going to be very, very worrying. Let me take you to another graph right now. And this graph is also from CMIE. This graph represents the age bars. And you can see there are 6 bars in this bar graph. Each of them represent a different age group. Teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. And it basically shows the gain or the loss of jobs in each age group during the lockdown. And you'll see bars number 2 and 3 representing those in their 20s and those in their 30s have lost the most, whereas in the 40s, 50s, and 60s have actually kept their jobs. And why is that? Why has that happened? Because no new jobs have been created for freshers, according to the CMIE. Younger and inexperienced employees have apparently been cut first, and there's no room to train new recruits. And as a result, there's no space for recruits because nobody has the time to train them. So what we're looking at right now is a massive loss of salaried jobs. And because of that massive loss, we're actually seeing the worst hit are those between their 20s and their 40s. So those in their 20s and their 30s are the worst hit. Now, the worst piece of information I have received, and I'm sorry that it gets worse, there's more to worry. There are reports that actually suggest that in the next decade or so, the average age of our population will go up from 24, which it is right now, to 34. That means we will no longer be the young country that we are right now. So the working population will actually go up, which means that there will be more and more people to employ, not enough jobs to give them, and we will lose that magic opportunity we've been talking about for the last 15 years or so, that we're a young country, and that is our greatest resource. So which means that solving this problem is actually on the clock. We have a limited amount of time to solve the problem. Now, the worst part of all of this, like I told you, is the young people who are under pressure right now because there are no jobs to be had, and the ones who have jobs are either being cut from their jobs or being given severe pay cuts. That's the discussion that we're having today, and I invite you to ask your questions as well, because we have a stellar panel that we put together. Quick round of introductions. Professor Santosh Mehrotra is an economist, and he in fact put out a research paper that was published by CMIE in November 2019 that actually listed out the fact that we were already in trouble between the decade of, or if not exactly a decade, but between the 5 years of 2011-12 to 17-18. And it's that trouble that really has been sort of complicated even worse and made worse by COVID. We have Aditya Narayan Mishra, who's the director and CEO of CIEL HR Services. K.E.Raghunathan, who's the convener of the Consortium of Indian Associations. He speaks from a businessman's point of view. Chandler Kumar is an activist specifically in the matters of labor, and I'll come to that. What's happening right now is that the government is, in this session of parliament, modifying our labor laws without giving citizens even a peek into what the draft of those labor laws are. And this is a problem. Why? Because when there are fewer jobs to have and more people seeking those jobs, it becomes an employer's market. They can tell you, you know what, I'm not going to give you Saturday, Sunday off. I'm going to make you work 14 hours a day. You're not in a position to say no. Now that sort of advantage and abuse is, you're protected by labor laws. The labor laws protect you. And when the labor laws are changed, we run the risk of actual loss of rights of workers. And labor laws, let me remind you, also protect you and me, and not just those who work in factories. So we're going to take a look at that. And finally, we have Michelle Lobo, who is an ISB graduate, who got a job with a startup, but it was revoked in September. She graduated this April, has been looking for a job. And I remember as a reporter, when I used to work out of Hyderabad, ISB jobs were the plum jobs. We used to actually do stories about how these guys got great offers and how they were getting better offers than some of the IMs as well. So if those graduating from the Indian School of Business are not getting jobs as MBAs, then that's something to worry about. That's our panel for this evening. We're taking questions from our audience as well. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Let's get straight to it. I want to start, if I may, with the permission of the panel, with Michelle. Michelle, good evening, and thank you for joining us. Tell us what your experience has been in your job search this year, and also give us an idea of what the rest of your batchmates are facing while they look for jobs.
Sure. Good evening, Faye. Thanks for having me. So, what we've seen this year after a stellar placement season that actually happened last November in 2019, we were all very excited to, start work in around May. But what ended up happening post-COVID was a lot of recruiters came in saying that, we cannot get you all in immediately. We're going to have to push by a couple of months. So a lot of people saw their offers getting pushed by a couple of months while we were supposed to get in May, June. A lot of people came in much later, June, July. Some of them are even waiting to join yet, but we're hoping they'll join before, between now and December. A few of us, I'd say that's a small number, between 1% to 2% of us have seen our offers get revoked, unfortunately, because COVID has been, extremely hard on businesses of the recruiters. So that has happened. It's a small number, although, but it is unfortunate, and that's what's happened. In terms of job search, I would say that it's not as easy as it was a couple of years
Mm.
ago. I myself have been looking out for the last couple of days and weeks, in fact. It's not easy. I've had to look for jobs earlier, and I'd say what would take 3 to 4 weeks is now taking easily, 2 months, and even then you can't tell what will happen. Along with that also comes the fact that you'll have to agree to a pay cut. Corporations or firms will not be able to match expectations. A lot of them have come in saying we won't be able to pay you this much. Are you willing to work at a lower rate, perhaps a 25% cut? So that's what we are seeing. That's been my personal experience.
All right. Let me just bring in the rest of the panel as well. Professor Mehrotra, I come to you first. Um, Unfortunately, the numbers show us that young India is suffering the most from this lockdown and the resulting job loss. How bad do you think the situation is? How long is it going to take us to get back on our feet where we can employ everybody who's coming out of college?
Many years. Short answer, many years. Because, first of all, you rightly said that just over 5 million are joining the labor force every year. And this number is increasing every year and will continue to increase over the next 10 years. But it's not just that. There are two other groups which are looking for work, and they are those who were in agriculture already before the reverse migration back to agriculture, and they wanted to leave, and now we have 14 million additional people who are looking for work in agriculture or outside agriculture. And the second group, in addition to the 5 million entering the labor force, are those who were already unemployed. So there were at least 30 million which were openly unemployed in 2019. And that number, as the economy continued to slow before COVID, was already increasing, and that number has shot up, as you've rightly said. So the situation is grim. The contraction is happening this year. It is likely to continue next year. And what that means is that we may not return to the level of the per capita income of 1920 until towards the end of 22-23. So roughly 3 years from now, 2.5, 3 years.
Okay. 3 years from now, Aditya, Narayan, Mishra, do you agree with that estimate? And are you seeing the same thing? More young people looking for jobs, more young people losing their jobs?
Yeah, I think that's right, because we see across industry sectors what's happening is there is a huge amount of contraction of demand. So whether it is manufacturing, textile, construction, across industry sectors, there is a huge demand contraction. So when demand is lesser than what it used to be, so the natural reaction of the management team is to reduce the number of people working hands who are producing something. So that's what we really see at this point of time. Just a few sectors which are possibly not so much manpower intensive,
Mm.
for example, maybe education technology as a sector, or financial technology as a sector, or some of the startups which are well funded. They're not really as manpower intensive as, let us say, construction, or let's say healthcare, social sectors and all of that. So where you need really human beings to go and connect with the beneficiaries, or things like that. So, barring those sectors, most other sectors are facing this. And IT industry, which used to be the sector which sort of provided jobs to the freshers in the engineering colleges and many other, even undergrad colleges and postgrad colleges, due to automation and due to some of the changes which are happening today in the US and maybe the continental Europe and all of that, where they're kind of seeing how to restructure the contracts that they have given to the companies here. And possibly a project which required 500 people, the scope has been reduced, and hence you do not require so many people, and hence IT industry itself is also not looking at sort of hiring at a large number. There could be a certain other parameters for the IT industry which might bring the industry back to revival soon. However, in general, I think the young people are suffering across industry sectors,
Yes.
and particularly the freshers who Michelle talked about her personal experience and her peers. I see that many other undergrad colleges as well facing similar kind of issues. Unpaid internships, you alluded to, we see that happening in many places.
Right. I just want to acknowledge Thomas John, Aniket Kumbare for supporting us financially using the super chat feature. We also have support coming in from a couple of other of our viewers, Neeraj Gope and Harish and Thomas John again. Thank you so much. We continue, of course, to do this independent journalism in good work and bring you stories that we believe are important because you support us financially. K.E.Raghunathan is with us. Mr. Raghunathan, we've talked through the lockdown about how bad things were for small and medium-sized businesses. Has it reached a point now where people in these offices and in these factories, salaried people, have lost their jobs?
Good evening, Faye.
Good evening.
The situation is very complicated now. I'll tell you why. You take a vessel, and the vessel is a kind of a volume which gives you an employment. And there is a water, and the water is the number of people who are employed. There are a lot of leakages. So the whole water is getting drained. Instead of arresting the leakages, the government is aiming about pouring more water into the tap. So the arrest has not been happening, so the water is getting drained. Let me give you a few examples. Okay. Now we are about 130 to 140 million people, crores of population. At least about 40 crores of employment opportunity must be there to sustain the market. The MSME contributes about 12 crores of employment. And if you take self-employment, and if you take government employment, and if you take large-scale employment, totaling is about 18 to 20 crores of employment. Agriculture is seasonal. The first quarter of this year was saved by agriculture because of the harvesting time. Now, in the 20 crore, we understand that the impact of the last 5 months has taken away 30% easily. Easily. Some sectors not functioning at all, some sector contained functioning, some sector opened but no orders. 30% of it is 4 crores. So far, we have reached only 2.1 crore, which is the official data. So another at least 50% of it is officially seen. It's a very simple logistics. Second aspect is everywhere, every age group, there is a confusion. Take an age group of a child between 3 and 13 who are in schools. We have got a new education policy which is debatable. When they will open is debatable. Online education is debatable. And who is the sufferer? The dependent parents are not able to go to their job because they have to look after the kids who are at home. There is a loss there. Then you come to the other sector, which is age of 14 to 22, college students. Now we are giving all pass without even an exam. When they will get internship, when they will get job, with the proper passage itself, they are not getting job. Without writing exam, if you do all pass, where will they get employment? Now, who is the sufferer? The suppliers to the colleges, educational institutions, we have lost business. Then come to 23 to 45. Your chart very clearly shows, no? Who are those people? Who are fresh job seekers, then self-employed entrepreneurs. Self-unemployed entrepreneurs have become now common. If you ask somebody, what are you doing? They used to proudly say, I'm self-employed. Now they are saying, I'm self-unemployed. We are coining new words for being occupied. So that is the next level. Then the middle age. Loan takers cannot take more loans when we are at middle age because we are worried. So every age group, Faye, we are now going through a most challenged, stressful days. We are focusless. What is my tomorrow going to be? I don't know. What is my next month going to be? I don't know. Who will get the job? I don't know. People who lose jobs, people who lose salaries, people who lose the responsibility of what they were handling earlier, everything is getting lost. This is what I said, the leakages in the pot. Are we arresting? Are we arresting? Very important question. Unless I arrest the leakages, how can I pour more water? I think this is the concern which is I am having. I am participating on this subject in various debates with you, but the condition is becoming worser, worser, worser.
Right.
We are not improving.
Yes, I want to point out to our audience that we made a very honest attempt today to bring in a representative of the BJP to have this conversation with us, especially since it has to do with young people, but nobody agreed to be part of this conversation. Before you start accusing me of the fact that we don't bring in anyone to defend the motion, nobody wanted to defend this motion. Mr. Chandler Kumar is with us. He's an activist who's looking specifically at labor laws. Mr. Kumar, I know that the government has, in fact, decided to modify our labor laws, and it will be presented to Parliament. The cabinet has approved it over the last couple of days. Do we know what these modifications are and how they will change the lives of workers? Because tomorrow, if someone like Michelle is offered a job, we want to make sure that the terms and conditions of the job is reasonable. Will she have that protection from our labor laws?
Thanks, Faye. First of all, I really congratulate you for having a kind of absolutely illogical debate, because entire media is doing some interesting debate on the national television. So I hope that this illogical debate will give some kind of sense to the people of the country and to discuss absolutely illogical issues. So thank you so much. You have been very consistent with talking about the workers and inviting all of us. First of all, yeah, I think what's happening in this country, and I said on your show a couple of times that we are heading towards authoritarian regime. And I'm again sort of reiterating on that. You see what happened the day before yesterday, the two major policy development. Santosh is a senior of mine. We have interacted with him so many times on the labor law reform debate. So he definitely will echo what I'm trying to say. What happened day before yesterday, there are two decisions. One, the Ministry of Labor has issued the new guidelines about the workers who want to come back to the labor market and what kind of response it would be as accountability is concerned. So I think that's a very detailed thing, but it's a very kind of bizarre to see that if you just go on the Ministry of Labor website and you open the draft and there is no DO number, there's nothing. It is just like kind of a random Microsoft Word document converted into the PDF, and they have just uploaded it. So I have no idea that how the state will going to perceive this document, whether it will be enforceable or not. I have no really any idea about that. And if you read this document, where there's kind of guidelines that states should do this, states should do that, they should organize the travel allowance, they should organize housing, they should register the workers, and so on, etc. And suddenly I'm really kind of afraid that the whole new debate has absolutely kind of silenced this debate that what the workers is going to come back. I live in the Western Corridor, and I'm seeing that in the last 4 weeks there's almost 19,000 workers come back. We are monitoring the railway station. We are seeing what's happening there. And absolutely workers are coming into this whole chaotic situation. There's nobody to receive them. They don't know where to go, where they can find the jobs, etc. So it's absolutely, kind of the chaotic situation. The second point, so just give me 30 seconds. The second point is the labor law reform. These reform, now the cabinet, it is in the media. I mean, nobody knows about it. As a labor rights activist, I have no idea about that. What are these texts? What government is going to talk about that? I can talk about the Parliamentary Standing Committee report, which came last month. We read the text and we expressed very solid opposition that this draft is not going to help the kind of critical working class we're discussing about, the informal sector workers. The same draft, the same thing, the last 70 years, the entire law have been in the archaic format. They have failed to address the need and demands of the informal economy, unorganized sector workers, and most of these drafts in the same format. So I have no idea what government is trying to achieve. We just heard from the newspaper that the cabinet has approved all these 3 codes. One law was passed last year, the labor code on the wages, by the parliament in the monsoon session. So far, till today, there is no rules. There's no rules.
So one second, Mr. Kumar, I want to ask you this. I'm reading out of the Economic Times article on this same matter. Its headline says Cabinet approve amendments to 3 labor codes. And it says, if you scroll down enough, it says these changes will help states such as Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, and Uttar Pradesh in pushing through labor law reforms they had introduced recently, including allowing businesses to extend a shift from 8 to 12 hours a day. So how can this be done without giving us a draft of what these changes are?
Absolutely. So you're absolutely right, Faye, that nobody knows about this draft. Nobody knows about this text. I mean, you will be very surprised to know that the government has not organized even a single Indian labor conference since this government came to the power. I'm talking about since 2015. There's not even a single tripartite dialogue between the trade unions. So there's no dialogue at all. And now the government is passing all these codes, and the labor organizations have no idea about that, how these codes is basically, what kind of implications it would be. As far as the text is concerned, the Parliamentary Standing Committee report is concerned, and whatever the draft code came into the public domain, I can tell you the 3 main points. One thing is that our weight as an informal sector worker, our constituency informal sector workers, which constitutes 93% of the total working population, contributes over 60% of country's GDP. This is not my data, this is the government of India data. For such a huge working population in this country, there's no legislative framework, there's no legislative statutory framework, protection framework for these workers. Second point, this new reform is going to basically allow the entire labor market, especially the employers, not to allow the unions to organize, not to allow the unions to organize a protest. They will allow not to basically access the minimum wages. They will not allow to access the social security. So whatever we have achieved in the last 93 years, we have a 93 years of the history of the labor law making.
But one second, Mr. Kumar, that seems a little drastic. Let me just take this to Professor Mehrotra. Professor Mehrotra, have you had a chance to look through this? And I'm sure you might have, out of curiosity, what do you think the changes are going to be? Because the idea,
the public domain, it is not available in the public.
But the idea that you are putting forward, that we will no longer be allowed to unionize and we will no longer be allowed to stage protest, is a direction against a fundamental right, which I don't believe
absolutely
the government can constitutionally do. Professor?
Okay, say this is a shocking development, that because the last draft codes that we had seen, there were real issues with them. And like Chandan, many of us had sent detailed comments, particularly for the Social Security Code, which was the last standing committee on labor of Parliament, which was prepared, finalized at the end of August, if I remember correctly. Or maybe at the end of July, sorry, end of July.
It was end of July, Professor.
Thank you, end of July, July. Point is, we were expecting that this is now going to get redrafted, because the standing committee's report, if you look at Parliamentary Standing Committee's report on these codes, they were brutal in their criticism. The Parliamentary Committee's reports were, and they have BJP members, please try and understand. They were brutal. I mean, I know that 19 of the suggestions I had made were incorporated in the Standing Committee report on Social Security. And if now the cabinet has already approved, without anyone seeing what has been approved, that means it is going to go to Parliament. That means with a brute force, this is going to get passed.
Absolutely.
The working class will be out on the roads protesting. This is not going to end very easily.
No, but someone explained to me, and I'm also looking at a couple of reports that say gig workers will come under the labor code. What is a gig worker, and what are the 3 main things that these labor laws are going to change, Professor?
I think we'll have to have another separate discussion on the 3 labor codes. You can't have that. The gig worker is presumably Ola Uber.
Okay.
the Social Security Code has a small chapter on, they call it gig worker. And the way they talk about it is you can see Ola, Uber. And other than that, some people who are able to work out of home. You know, that chapter, if you read it, you'll be really ashamed, because you would wonder what about the drafting ability of the senior officers in the Ministry of Labor who obviously drafted. And mind you, this is already the fourth draft which the standing committee was looking at. So what is now being produced after the standing committee's report and has been approved by cabinet is the fifth draft. And the fourth was a disaster. The first two drafts were better. The third and fourth were pretty bad. And now God knows what we are going to get. This is becoming a nightmare. Absolutely. It is about to become a nightmare for the government, I'm sorry to say.
Well, this is indeed a nightmare. And I just want to remind my urban cool viewers that unionizing, and over the years, people have given a very bad name to unions, saying that, this is just really painful. But unionizing is really important. So when you go to work and you take it for granted that you will get a Sunday off, it's because someone in the history of labor laws and unionizing fought for that weekly off. Someone fought for regulated timings of 8-hour shifts, and after that it goes into overtime. Someone fought for maternity leaves. Someone fought for paid leave, sick leave, casual leave. These are all rights under labor laws that protect every one of us who go to work. So if the government is changing those laws, it affects all of us who have jobs and all of us who hope to have jobs at some point, which means we all should show interest. And it is highly surprising and worrying that the government is making these changes without showing us a draft of what these changes are. That is a terrible, terrible thing. Mr. Raghunathan, you're the only one here who runs a business. And I know that business people will say, this is a good thing. It will allow us to recover faster. Do you see this as a good thing?
I don't know, how do you call it as a good thing at all? First of all, I don't see it as a good thing because I have so many other things to be worried about. First, I should have an order to manufacture. Then I should worry about the people. First of all, I don't have a demand. Second, what I manufacture, it is dependent upon some components which have to come from China or Germany or wherever it is. Now they are all not coming. They are getting stuck. I am worried about profitability. My costs have increased dramatically high. What I used to buy at 10 rupees value is today costing me 17 rupees value. I'm just saying 70% increase in the raw material cost. Whereas my sales price is not increasing. Sales price is decreasing. Cost is going up. How do I make the ends meet? Now I am caught between the situation. If I perform, I make further loss. If I don't perform, it is actually less loss to me. If I sit idle, it is lesser loss to me. Whereas if I run the company, it is more loss to me. Take the case of most of the people today. After this unlocked period, earlier we were locked. So we were not accepting some fixed cost and overheads. Today we are opening. Our current bill has gone up, but no business. Our staffs are coming, but no work. So our cost has increased now with the sales has come down drastically. So in my opinion, as an entrepreneur, if you ask me, I am not that much worried about the labor problem now because I have much bigger problem. As I told you, the analogy of so many leaks are there in my pot. If I hold one and close it, the other side is leaking. So I am now dancing which side I should close. So it depends upon the dates. Today is 9th, 10th morning, you will get something coming into your bank as a check, which is a ECS. We waited for moratorium, never came. Now we waited for restructuring. That is not likely to come at all. Now I need to be restructured myself. Atmanirbhar is something which has been well coined. I have to help myself.
Mr. Raghunathan, I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but there was a report, which I'm sure you've read, saying that the Finance Ministry is looking at a special package for non-salaried middle class, which basically is self-employed or entrepreneurs like yourself. Do you expect that to fix any of your problems?
No, you are looking is different. Finally, when you perform the operation, the patient may be died. Your operation may be success. But the patient has to survive, no? Your stitch in time saves nine, no? What you are supposed to have done in April, if you don't do in April, if you do it in August, the problem has become much bigger, no? If there was only one leak in the pot, if you had arrested well in time, everything would have been saved. You have allowed the leaks to increase. Now, which leak you will under arrest? Earlier, it was a small hole. Now, it has become a big hole. So, things are entirely different, Faye. Now, we have not addressed the problem in the right way. That is my concern. It is my concern. When everybody were worried about how to repay the loan, I give them more loan. Now, when everybody were taken the loan and unable to repay, then I do the restructuring. When I restructure the loan, I put conditionalities.
Yes.
And these are the sectors. Why entrepreneurs are never rated? Only sectors are rated? You mean to say everybody involved in a particular sector will do very well? Or everybody involved in a particular sector will do very badly? There is no capability of an entrepreneur. Promoter is never gauged. Promoter's success stories, promoter's past, promoter's capability to turn around, he's got no weightage.
Yeah.
You tell me, should we not take all these parameters? It is for the banker, by the banker, of the banker scheme. It is not for the entrepreneur, by the entrepreneur, to the entrepreneur scheme. Now, where are we going?
Where are we going indeed? Let me take this back to Aditya. Aditya, I'm almost now embarrassed asking the same question over and over again as to what the solution is, because we keep talking about solutions on these shows, but it doesn't seem like anyone in government is really listening. I mean, they're listening to starlets who need Y plus protection, which is fine, let them listen, but they should also have ears for the millions and millions of entrepreneurs and self-employed and young people like Michelle who are graduating. They don't seem to be listening. My question to you, Aditya Mishra, is if the problem, which is time sensitive, is not solved on an immediate basis, what are we looking at?
I think it's we are going to get into a bit of a vicious circle. Many more businesses will shut down, more employment opportunities are going to go away. I think the short answer is that we have to find ways of boosting consumer confidence so that they are interested in buying. They have the confidence in the future of their own earning streams. At this point of time, I think many people aren't very sure that whether they are going to get their incomes, whether it's an entrepreneur who's running a business or it's a office goer in the middle level or in the senior level. So there is a lot of uncertainty and volatility around us. Uh, which is actually weakening the sentiment and confidence. So when the confidence is low, naturally I am not planning long term, and most of the country's GDP, a large part of it is sort of pushed by the amount of white goods or the capital goods and the expenses happening on that, investments happening on that, right? I mean, there are, of course, more qualified people than me on this panel to talk about it. But whatever I understand from a recruitment perspective, since we cater to all the industry sectors, I hear companies saying that, yeah, I will hire or I will recruit these people provided the situation becomes better. So when I ask CEOs of different industry sectors, they say that, yeah, hopefully, 3 months ago, people said that hopefully September, October, November would become better. They were looking at Diwali and possibly the pent-up demand will get unlocked and all of that. So a lot of white goods companies and Indians buy a lot of stuff around the festivities. So people thought so, but now the kind of infection and the overall sentiments are, it's a bit of a complicated situation right now. So companies aren't really sure. So we are looking at now, uh, people are optimistically saying that maybe January, February, March of 2021 will be the time where we will go back to 2020 Jan, Feb, March, optimistically. Some people are saying that maybe it will be April, May, June of
No, but
2021. So
in order to do that, Aditya, in order to go back to where we were in January this year, by January next year, the months of half of September, October, November, December will have to grow at what, Professor? 15%, 20%? When we're at 23%?
Yeah. When, I mean, what Aditya is, if his friends are talking about are hoping for January to March, I think they should already forget about it. They should forget about all of 21. Because the way it's careening downwards, it's spiraling downwards right now. You see, none of you are able to imagine what is happening, because we've never seen this before. But it's not that the global economy has not seen this before. It's not that Germany and Italy and Europe has not seen this before, or United States has not seen this before. It has seen this post 1929. And this is worse than post 1929, is what I'm trying to say to you, both globally, but much more for India, and much more for India because of the mismanagement in India. And the
No, but so the prediction of more shutdown, worse job losses than we're already looking at. And I just want to remind our viewers, we're talking about the salaried job loss, because someone who had to shut his shop has opened his shop. Yes, with less demand, but someone who's selling vegetables has gone back to selling vegetables. But it's the salaried people who lose their jobs who find it far more difficult to get a job again. It's not as simple as there was a lockdown and now there's no lockdown. That's the difficult part. And, my response, quite honestly, to the government, so concerned about gig workers of Ola, Uber, Swiggy. They're being slaughtered by the diesel prices right now and the petrol prices right now. If you really were concerned about them, then moderate those prices and stop making a killing off those prices. What they're doing there is really unfair. So this is hypocrisy and lip service. If we're looking at a 21 million job loss number right now, Professor, how much worse is that likely to be by the end of the year?
Certainly a few million more. We could say that the worst is over, but it isn't. Meaning the worst losses have already taken place, but they will continue and they will accumulate. So, it's very difficult to say at this point. This is so unprecedented. It is truly difficult to estimate how many more job losses will happen. See, let me try and break it down by broad sectors, because that's all one can do. But let me start from before, and I'll be very brief. And Raghu, I want to hear you on this, because I know you raised your hand. You see, manufacturing was losing jobs prior to the pandemic. Losing jobs, which was the first time in the history of India that manufacturing was losing jobs. So let us forget about manufacturing reviving and providing jobs. What was providing the jobs were the services sector, and only the modern service sector. By modern, you've already mentioned the modern service, but it's the modern service sectors which have been pulverized as a result of what are the modern services which have been pulverized? Tourism, hotels, restaurants, airlines. Trade and transport is losing work. So in other words, the one hope or prospect from where jobs were coming were the modern services sector, airlines. They are devastated. Health education, we might see some increase, but even there, I don't see much hope, because certainly the government is not providing the fillip on that. So that's why I keep saying, you ain't seen nothing yet. This is going to become worse. How much worse? I'm not willing to guess at this point. It's a guess at this point.
That's really, really distressing. But I saw Mr. Raghunathan put his hand up. And signals are number 4. Are you saying we're going to add 4 million more unemployed people to this list by the end of the year? Is that what you're saying?
No, no, you will touch 4 crores of unemployment before this December. That is what I am saying. For 40 million is what I was showing you. Right now you are at 21 million. You will touch 40 million. I gave you the logistics behind it, how you will arrive at that. But let me explain to you, Faye. As Professor said, the most important job activity is the service sector. In an engineering industry, for us, the service sector means field activities. You know, some big project coming up, we take up some contracts. I supply, for example, the plant and then installation, commissioning and modernization, whatever. None of them is going to be seen in the next 3 months at all. Every year, the quarter 2 and 3, the field activities is always hampered because of the climatic condition. This year, we have already received 40% higher rains. Number 1. Number 2, COVID has not yet over. We are more concerned. Unlock might have come, but the responsibility on our shoulder is much higher. We are scared, literally scared. We are scared because if any one of my employee or even me, if we catch up with the COVID, then our hospitalization expenditure will touch another couple of lakhs, which we don't have money. Leave alone my family or myself. We have to take care of the family who are dependent on us. So we are worried. There are a lot more concerns. So COVID, we are today talking almost reaching a lakh. We have gone, what we are doubling now. We are quite fast touching, but nobody talks about no COVID impact in the country. Today, everybody has forgotten the life importance. We have now become the livelihood importance.
Yes.
But
even that
the
may
fact,
not be very well.
no,
Even
the
that may
fact,
not be very well.
exactly. So that is what I was coming to. I was worried about one eye when I started the game in April, which now I lost this eye also and I lost this eye also. I have become a blind man now. Now, you tell me, Faye, you tell me. You are conducting the debate, you are meeting across the people. I meet only entrepreneurs. I am representing the association, so all problems only come to me. Today morning, 20 phone calls have come to me from the various people. That bank managers are visiting the entrepreneur's place. They have frozen the accounts. They are giving a rescheduling of the payment, which is starting from next month. The Government of India scheme is saying 1 year moratorium, but they are not implying. So somebody frames the law, but the down the line is not listening to the law. What is happening? We did a small Twitter survey today morning. For 4 hours we did. We only asked one question. Any of you, if you have taken a loan, are you happy? Yes, no. 94% unhappy. Now, where it will lead to? You tell me. You know, there is a saying, when I am crossing the water above my head, whether 1 inch goes, 1 feet goes, 10 feet goes, how does it matter? I am dead, no?
Yes.
I am inside the water, no? So, same way, we are losing the patience. My agony, I would have talked like this 3 months back. Now my agony is much more because all my energy is getting wasted only by shouting. Why shouting? I am drawing the attention, but my shouting is not getting the attention. Now what I should do? It has become a growing shame. Instead of industries growing, we have become now growing the shame. Where will it end?
I want to bring in Chandan Kumar. I know that you had a point to make. Mr. Kumar, go ahead.
No, I just want to make a very small intervention what Raghunathan ji was talking about. I think it's a very, very important question. The entire MSME sector, the manufacturing sector, across the world, you just open the data, Professor Mehrotra can talk more about it, but I've seen that all the lower income countries across global south, the government has given huge moratorium to revive the economy, to revive the labor market. It's a very clear question that if government is not going to allocate fund, they are not going to strengthen the MSME sector, it will be finished. There has to be a wage subsistence. There has to be a proper allocation, but this economy will revive. Otherwise, of course, we can keep talking about the job losses as we are doing that, but what about the reviving it? What are the measures? We have written so many times to Nirmala Sitharaman as a workers' organization, and we have not received any response. We have been shouting on so many times on TV, as Raghunathan just talked about that. But government is not taking a single initiative to revive this market and also to make sure that these workers are coming back. They should get at least some basic employment. I just wanted to make it small, this point.
No, but when you say that they get some basic employment, where will they be employed?
That's a very, very big question. I mean, I can tell you from my own experience. I mean, I'm not an economist, Faye, but I can tell you that the workers were coming back mostly to the construction sector. I can see from that they still started coming on the labor nakas. There's absolutely no jobs. Construction industry, they are sending the big trucks to Bihar, Bengal, Odisha. You know, the workers are coming back. They are giving. There are some jobs for sure. I can see that there's so many, the unfinished construction, kind of sites where the people are getting job. But I cannot talk about the other areas. And you go to those construction sites, those areas, again, the same thing, 300 rupees, 250 rupees is a kind of poverty wage. Again, there's no registration, no social security. So I can give you, I'm telling you from my own experience last week. So the same situation, if anything happens tomorrow, I'm in the same situation.
No, but basically then, Professor, are we hoping the government extends Manrega to urban India and gives people ditch digging jobs in the city as well?
No. Urban Manrega will be a very positive thing. It's not ditch digging at all. I mean, in rural Manrega is creating good assets in rural areas. The ponds, the tanks, are being refurbished. In time, this is going to hopefully improve productivity. And I have said this on your program many times over, that if you put in place an urban Manrega at this point, you will do it for very positive work. Like, now, it will obviously provide work not for the kind of people who Mr. Raghunathan can employ, but nor that Aditya can generate work for, nor Michelle. But the point is, for those who have gone back to rural areas, construction work is absolutely critical. And these workers will begin to come back. And as I've said this before to you, an urban Manrega will be substitutive of the government's expenditure on rural Manrega. The government will have to spend less on rural Manrega because many of the workers will come back and work here. And if you create housing, for instance, on government land, that will begin to attract the workers back. So at least one source of, supply bottleneck that Raghunath is talking about is going to be eased. But, the long-term scenario is not good. I mean, if these kinds of actions are not taken today, the long-term scenario is not good at all. Even in the best case scenario, the long-term scenario is not good. Let me explain to you what long-term scenario is. Beyond 3 years, on your program, I've always talked about the next 2 to 3 years. I've never so far mentioned about what's likely to happen. Because if we are going to take another 3 years, that means 22, 23 to get back to 1920 levels, because the economy would have suffered such a severe shock, and the private investment is going to grow only very slowly. And please remember that in this process, banks would have been ravaged. Banks' NPAs would have gone from 8 to 9% of advances today to 15%. Yashwant Sinha's son has already said this. Point one, RBI has said this. Point one. Point two, the fiscal deficit of the government must today is probably today at the level of 12% of GDP, center and state combined, and this is going to worsen. So can you imagine what will happen as we move forward beyond 2 to 3 years? The government will go into fiscal consolidation mode. In other words, it will not be able to spend. So because it will not be able to spend, private investment will not revive. And because all of these things will be happening, and the global economy would have been collapsing all this time, exports would have not been growing. So in the best case scenario, when we go into positive growth territory, beyond the 1920 level of GDP, we will be growing at 3 to 5% per annum at best for the next following 5 years, 4 to 5 years at most. By which, and can you imagine the millions joining the labor force at that time?
Yes. I just want to read out some of the comments. Siddharth Sharma has said, my father's business, which he built over 15 years, is on the brink of shutting down. because the bank isn't willing to give us the MSME loan the government had guaranteed in the economic package. So this echoes really what Raghunathan is saying, the fact that the government keeps announcing things and says we're doing all of these wonderful things, but it's actually not translating on the ground, and we're running out of time. Michelle, Lobo, I'm going to give you the last word here on this show. As a young person in this country, and also one must remember that when people do MBAs and when they study engineering and when they go to medical college, they invariably also take loans, which they're expected to pay back after they start working. What happens then if you don't get jobs? How are you going to pay back those student loans? How are you going to sort of lend a shoulder to your parents' household, which is the plan that you had when you started studying? I want you to tell us what, as a young person, you expect from the country and the government right now, and what you believe needs to be done.
You brought the focus to a very important point. When I started, the plan was to sort of elevate myself or upgrade myself to a higher paying job, so that I could help with the standard of living of my family, contribute to my family, sort of move to a better life myself. So a situation like this, although unprecedented, has had very real repercussions. I've had to think of, oh, how am I going to pay back my loans? And these are concerns that all of my colleagues are echoing, right? My expectations right now, it's a scary time. I don't even know if I should have expectations. I've told that it's not, I've been told it's not a good idea to have expectations at this point. But I'm really, truly, truly hoping that, the government sort of steps in and at least shows us that, we're trying, we're taking up measures, we're taking up initiatives to fix things, uh, bring in assistance wherever possible. I understand demand is going to be slow for a while, but until we have people step in, the government step in and reassure us and show us that things are going to get better, the demand is not going to revive. So yeah, I expect help to come in from the government. I also, personally, I feel like it's very important right now for private companies, and I've seen them be very, very encouraging in my time. In my time of interacting with them, take a little leap of faith here. Tell us, hire us. Do not, it is a tough time to be in. Uh, Even if you're going to hire us at a lower pay, hire us nonetheless. That's better than revoking an offer. That's better than not having work at all. That's all. That's all I would say on a personal level. It's very important for us now to be flexible and take up, work that we can do. I don't think we can afford to be choosy in any way. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
That's very well said, Michelle. And we've run out of time, and I'm going to leave this on that very point. The fact that we need the government to do something. Um, we're running out of time, and we were running out of time 3 months ago when we needed the government to do something. It's been much 100 days since the Prime Minister had presentations made to him on the various situations in the market and in the economy, and the kind of things that need to be done. But we've not had any announcements from the Finance Ministry of any sort of package that will help us get back on our feet. People are losing jobs, and if we continue to move in this direction, more people will lose jobs, and it's going to become even more difficult to accommodate. Remember, and it's a cycle. The economy, fundamentally, the first thing you learn in your first class of economics is that it has a domino effect. When one thing happens, it knocks over other things. We saw this happen in demonetization. You shut down one thing, and then it had an effect on many, many other things for many, many years. It's the same thing that's happening now. People lose jobs. Their families will cut their budgets and stop spending. When families stop spending, more people lose jobs. Because effectively, consider, I'll put it really simply, Dasera and Diwali are around the corner, where we do the most amount of spending in this country. If we're not going to go out, and we're not going to go out because there's a lockdown, but if you're not going to buy new clothes, and if you're not going to buy a lot of sweets, and if you're not going to spend a lot of money, all of the people who work in the retail sector, who actually make those sweets, who stitch the clothes, who work in the fabric factory, all of these people will lose jobs because you didn't buy anything. You didn't buy anything because someone in your family lost a job. So it will have a domino effect and it will keep multiplying and it will spiral downwards until the government steps in and does something. It is not up to me to instruct the government on what needs to be done. But we are a country with some brilliant economists who know these solutions. I don't understand why we don't have a war room that's meeting on a daily basis to assess this situation. We're not talking with the brightest minds in the country and the brightest minds also in the country who have left the country. Please call them back. Why we're not coming up with solutions and implementing them on a daily basis. The health ministry has not had a press conference in eons, and that's shocking because over 1,000 Indians are dying of COVID every day. Radio silence. The finance ministry should be having daily press conferences. The labor ministry should be having daily press conferences. They have to be talking to us at a time like this. They have to be talking to people like Mishra, Lobo and K.E.Raghunathan and Chandler Kumar, because these are people who are working on the ground. You need to tell us what's going on. You need to tell us what you have in mind. You need to tell us what you're planning so that we can then plan our businesses for the next 1 year. Decide how we're going to pay our student loans for the next 1 year. Decide how many people we are going to hire. I run a small business. I have 3 employees. We have hit the peak of what 4 people can do as far as news is concerned on a daily basis. And we've been doing this now for 4 months. If I'm going to hire 1 more person, I need visibility on what our economy is going to look like. I have no visibility because my government won't talk to me. I haven't heard the finance ministry or the finance minister speak to us in months. How are we going to decide if we want to take that risk and offer a couple of more jobs and give people jobs at this point if you're not going to tell us what you are planning? The opacity and the lack of communication is what is hurting the most. The government needs to take action. This is time sensitive. We're running out of time. We do not have time to sit on our palms on this one. Please, for heaven's sake, do your jobs. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, Faye.